Welcome in, guys. I'm going to touch base with the microphone, make sure everything's working as you guys start to enter into the live stream. Now, as you're coming in, if you don't mind just giving me a thumbs up, let me know if you can hear me clearly or if I need to adjust. That way we don't have to do it later on. And welcome in, guys. I'm testing out the audio. So if you guys don't mind, let me know if you can hear me. Okay, perfect. Welcome in, welcome in. Thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys being here. And I spent the last couple of days, I had a couple of days off and just I enjoy watching other content creators, watching what the content they create and their points of views on things. And I started seeing a trend happening on YouTube and I just could not. So I said, what a better day than the eve to really dive into a very serious concern that I have, which ultimately is what led to why I decided to create this channel in the first place. So I am working to get this pulled up just so I can see your comments as they come in faster in the event that I'm navigating away from everything. And so bear with me. I'm trying to do that. Okay. Good evening, guys. I have an idea of when I would like to cut things off tonight, and I'm going to share my screen and just show you guys. I'm going to be reading off of some bullet points that I've written for myself just so that I stay on topic, but also because there's certain things that really I want to make sure that I don't skip around too much and miss out. And so if you hear me and I may be deep into a conversation about a certain particular point, and then you hear me kind of pull back, you guys see there's quite a bit I want to be able to go over with you guys. And I just want to make sure that the message does not get lost in the actual um, process of explaining through things. I'm sorry, I'm reading the comments. You guys are hilarious. Welcome in. And I'm so cautious to even say your name because I wouldn't want to say it the backwards way. So, all right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let's see. All right. I'm going to start with this and my goodness, hold on. Get it? I will get this going smoothly, guys. I'll give everybody a little bit more time to come in too, because I typically don't go live very often. And when I do, it's usually really late at night. And so I want to make sure I give everybody a chance to come in. So something I really want to all right, so here's where we're gonna start. I'm gonna start, excuse me, I'm gonna start with this scripture. Now, again, this is not to push anyone into a religious direction by any means or anything of that sort. However, given the content that we're going to be speaking about tonight and everything that surrounds it, I really think it's important to make sure that we not only are objective in listening to other people's opinions and what their thoughts are, but also that we guard our hearts while we do so. And so one of my favorite scriptures, and this was one that really got me through one of it was literally my nastiest divorce. And this was like 15 years ago. But Ephesians 6:12 says, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Now, no matter what Bible you grab it out of, no matter what version of the Bible you grab it out of, it says the same thing. And in this case, especially with the Watts as well as the Millers, we're talking about the sanctity of marriage. And, marriage means different things to different people. And that's not really the argument we need to get into. But marriage is meant to be sacred. It's meant to bring two people together, to be partners, to really complement each other and encourage and strengthen each other and build. So, keeping that in mind, something I learned in the counseling was you have to always approach things as you and your spouse against whatever issue is at hand. No matter who started it, no matter where it came from, no matter who said what, you have to, as a married couple, take a step back and say, it is us against this hurt or against this pain or against this decision that was made that um, is creating this rift or this problem. And that can go over into finances, that can go over into friendships, relationships, family drama. It can go into work, it can go into school, it can go into raising children. It it can show its face anywhere. And so I want you guys to at least hold on to this scripture, tuck it away, write it down, scribble it down. That way, in the event you ever have to come back to it, it's good to remember when you're dealing with difficult people. And it takes 2 minutes through a comment section on any creators, in their comments, and you see exactly what we're dealing with on a daily basis with how people speak to each other and how they communicate. So you it really begins to teach you and to show you how to that's what the scripture did for me. It took me in a very low, very dark and painful divorce and situation, but it allowed me to address each problem as it came and each like good God, I felt like every time I'd get my feet up underneath me, they would be ripped out again. And in order for me to not lose my everlasting mind, I had to address it one after another, but I had to make sure my mind was in the right place. And it was a constant come back to the scripture, come back to what am I truly fighting in this moment? And I think that is just a solid foundation to start when we're talking about the circumstances of not only the Watts, but now the Millers. And for those of you who are not familiar with who the Millers are, I'm not talking about Shanann's friends who lived in North Carolina. I am talking about the new residents of the Watts home. Now, they have since put the home back on the market and it's going through that process again to be sold, and there's many reasons for that. So, keeping that in mind, I want to start tonight off with a moment of just silence. And so I have a little candle video that I'm just going to play, and it's about a minute long, but I do ask, this is a very painful evening. I don't know if many of you watched Sandy or Sandra Rusek's video that she posted about Bella's favorite egg salad that she always made with Bella. And it's over on her channel. And she's putting the egg in and she's talking about how that was like Bella's favorite part. And it I'm telling you, if you're a parent or a grandparent, it just hits you right in the heart because you can hear the pain. You can hear the pain that she's still living with and she's still struggling through. And on tonight being the eve of the anniversary of literally the worst day of their lives, I think it's really important to just take a moment of silence. And if we all pray for her and for the families, and I want to say the families because both families lost a lot. And now is again not the time to really go back and forth on, who's good, who's bad, that type of thing. Both families lost a lot. So, in this next minute, if we take a moment and if you pray, you want to send good vibes, whatever appeases your heart, let's do that. And then we'll get into the heart of the rest of the content for tonight. Okay. So if you don't mind, let's just take this moment to have a moment of silence. And if you believe in prayer, I ask that you pray for the families. And, if vibes are your things, I just pray that, or I hope that you would send good vibes to them. So let's do that. Okay, guys. So we're going to move on to the next subject, and that is the title of this live is "The House Isn't the Problem." And what are we missing that's right in front of our faces? And I started this channel. I'm sorry, I'm reading a comment. So, Rosemary, I'm going to come back to your comment a little bit later, okay? So, what are we missing that is literally right in front of our faces? And I believe so. First and foremost, Plunder did a phenomenal job again of going through Weld County, getting the body cam footage. We may look at some of the actual footage in this live. I don't know how I feel about that just because I know that she paid a lot of money for that footage and I wouldn't feel comfortable um necessarily like just using it. And I mean, I may use a little bit, but I don't know. We'll see. But Plunder did a wonderful job. I think she spent like close to $500 for the body cam footage. And again, that's why I said I don't really know that I want to actually play what she purchased because I don't think that's fair to her. She does a lot of work on her channel, and it's a great resource if you do want to go watch full unedited body cam footage. And I'm actually going to join the Patreon for her just so I can watch all of this from start to finish. Like, I want to be able to not just watch the video she created, but I want to be able to go in and see the videos from start to finish. But I do want to share with you my thoughts on even just the first, I want to say I watched that video she created was a little over an hour long, close to 2. And I mean, I watched the whole thing, but when I started taking notes, I got about 30, 40 minutes in and I was thinking, oh my goodness, we would end up having a 4 or 5 hour long live to really go through and pick apart, dissect each little antic that happens. Um, so there are a couple of things I really want to share with you. First and foremost, part of the reason why I feel like what I can say is in the comment sections of different videos that have been put out by different creators, I've been seeing a very even blend of comments. Now, I do give Plunder all the credit for the body cam footage, but some of the stuff that, even her opinion, I disagree on some of it because I feel like what we are able to see in this body cam footage is precisely what has been missing in the entire Watts case because it became all about preserving a reputation as opposed to seeing it as a whole. But the question then becomes why? And so the first thing that I noticed that was going on, hey ATS, I'm sorry, I'm trying to not look at comments because I get distracted. Welcome in. I'm so happy you're here. I know it's late. The first thing I noticed that started going off about this Miller, when the Miller case hit the airwaves and the body cam footage came out, you start seeing all of these creators coming up with, oh my gosh, the house is haunted. There's an evil spirit, or Kessinger cast a spell, or all of these things. Now, I will tell you, I am a believer. I am a Christian. I'm a believer. I believe in Jesus Christ, to each their own. And yet, at least in my belief, it's that darkness and those entities only have the power that you allow them to have. So whether you're Catholic or non-denominational or Protestant or just any denomination, there are different ideas and concepts about how to pray to intercede on behalf of these families or how to pray to protect yourself and your soul before you expose yourself into that entity, if you will. Now, I just feel like it was a quick jump to that because much like the sensationalism of domestic violence, no one wants to be able to see the truth for what it is. Now, the entity or the darkness that people speak of, they call it evil, they call it demonic, they call it all, and I'm not saying that it's not any and all of those things. However, you have to be careful when you're labeling such an entity because what tends to happen is the men are the ones that are getting the blame for being the quote unquote evil monster. And the truth is, the entity doesn't see male or female. And if, in fact, the entity, if you will, that people are claiming is in this house is that of a domestic violent behavior, guys, we see it in both of them in this body cam footage. You see it in the wife and you see it in the husband. And it's unfortunate that society would rather watch something at like superficial value, just face value, look at something and say, "Oh, he's the bad guy, she's the victim, and some evil force made all this happen." No, the reality is this couple has been married for 12 years. Both the husband and the wife attest to the fact that they have been through a lot in that 12 years. Now, we don't know what that is. And yeah, the wife is freaking out. But we find later on that the wife has a reason to be freaking out. She's not I'm not saying that the incident itself did not scare her. It's what she's worried about has everything to do with her own guilty conscience of what she had done, as opposed to what was going on essentially with the husband. So here's where we're going to dive into things just a little bit. So Marco, I agree with you. Their issues did not just creep up overnight. They definitely had issues before they even bought that house, and I think that comes out fold like tenfold when we're looking at just how quickly they had to put this house back on the market. All right. So let me go over here to my notes. I want to make sure that I'm trying to stay focused. I do, it may feel like I circled back to a couple topics, and that's just because I was really trying to make sure that it was thorough. So, one of the first things that I believe is happening in real time and based on the body cam footage is what really happened that night at the Millers. Now, guys, we never had a chance to see the inside of the Watts home until the girls and Shanann were already gone, right? Like our first look inside the Watts home, there was home decor, all the lights were out. It was only lit up by daylight. The girls were not there. Shanann was not there. There was no happy, lively energy going on in the house when we first got to see the Watts home. Now, with the Miller home, we see not one, not two, not three, but four law enforcement officers respond to this house, and they walk in, and the TV's going, it's a Super Bowl party. You've got a couple friends in the island or in the kitchen at the island. They're snacking on snacks. You've got kids running all over the place. They're just kind of in their own little zone, having fun. You've got the wife upstairs freaking out and crying, and then the husband lets the officers in and they go to the garage to talk. And depending on which body cam footage you watch first, really kind of determines what you see and what you hear first. So, something I do want to say from the start is that Colorado's no nonsense, I mean, like their laws against domestic violence is sharp. And the way the woman officer helped, or the way she talked to the wife, I felt was extremely professional. She was very thorough, and I do believe she knew how to question very appropriately. I mean, this team of officers really handled this domestic situation, in my opinion, very well. This officer is talking to the wife at the top of the stairs, and of course the wife says, I've had a few glasses of wine. Well, I don't know about you, but when you're drinking at home, your pouring of the wine at home is usually a little bit more than what you get when you go to the restaurant. And so a few glasses is 3 glasses, and depending on the bottle of wine you get, she's already drank like a bottle and a half of wine, and it's not even like 8 o'clock yet. So this mom, or this wife, I don't even want to go with the mom angle. This wife, this woman has put herself in a situation. She chose that situation, no matter how you want to split it. I don't believe that kiss with that friend was an accident. It wasn't a mistake. It was intentional, in my opinion. And I believe that so firmly because when you listen to how she tries to distance and downplay what actually happened on her account, you can see where she's trying to walk that thin line of, did I do something that's going to get me in trouble? And some may say that you may do that, whatnot. Um, and this brings up that very, very slippery slope anytime we're talking about anything Watts related. And that's his side, her side, and the truth. And the way the officer, as he's taking the husband to jail, he explains to him that if you commit a crime that indicates or it's by the book, so like for example, him slapping the glass out of her hand, whether it hurt her or not, was a misdemeanor. Him taking her cell phone and throwing it into the bedroom so that she could not get it to call for help, that was a misdemeanor. The fact that kids were involved, oh, we're getting to that loco. The fact that the kids were in the house is where we're going to head next because we're going to touch base on that. He gets slapped with a child abuse charge. Now, I don't want to jump too far ahead. We're going to come back to the charges, guys. Those charges were stacked that way intentionally and on purpose. And that was so that the wife was protected enough to be able to get a restraining order. And yet they dropped the child abuse charges if he pled guilty to the other two, which he admitted to. So that, it makes sense. He pled to two misdemeanor charges. Now, let's move on just a little bit, and we're going to come back to that. So let me read my notes real quick. So something that we can take note of in this video footage is the non-violent forms of domestic violence that can lead to escalation. And the body cam footage allows us to see what life looks like, inside the house. And they actually teach us something about the Watts home that I don't know that anyone across any channel has ever really pointed out. And it shows us the hot spots in the home. So let's talk about that for just a minute. Now, the moment that the moment that the officer walks in, the husband takes them straight to the garage. Now, you got to think it's January, there's snow on the ground. That garage has got to be cool. But when you've been drinking, you kind of need the cool air to help sober you up a little bit, right? Well, the husband takes law enforcement to the garage. So, because they have to separate them, they have to make sure that they're not going to be going at each other. And so the husband explains to the officer that, everyone was enjoying the game. It was a good evening. And essentially we realized, or one of the kids had told him previously that mom and this woman locked themselves in the master bedroom overnight and they locked the door, and that the kids woke up in the middle of the night, went to try to get in, mom's door was still locked and she wouldn't let them in. Now, you've got three children, young children in the home, and you whether you're doing any kind of other activities, whether you're sleeping or whatnot, three if you have three young children knocking and tapping and mommy, mommy on the door, and you don't get up in the middle of the night to check on them, that to me is problematic. At the very least, like, make sure they're not hurting, make sure they're not scared, walk them back to their bedroom, tuck them back in, and then go back to your room. So the dad is being told about this incident. Well, the woman that kissed the wife was the same woman that was in the bedroom with the door locked. And so the husband noticed at the party that night that his wife and that girl had kind of disappeared, like they just kind of gone off on their own. And so he felt like something wasn't right. So he looks up, and you can see up over the laundry room door, you can see the camera. It's like a kid camera. And the husband and the wife both attest to the fact that they put the camera up there because, you've got a finished basement where you can watch movies. You've got the main living room where you can watch movies, and the kids would stay upstairs and they would kind of play, and that was kind of like their area. So they had the camera to watch the children. So husband is suspicious of wondering what's going on, just so happens to look on the camera. And guys, I'm not really big on doing like their trucks are similar, like a side by side comparison of everything similar to Watts. But I will tell you this. The first time I ever heard the husband explain the incident where that woman looked at the camera, looked back, basically like, is someone back there, is someone watching, and then leans over and kisses the wife. Something like it reeked of Kessinger vibes all over the place. All over the place. The whole concept of looking into the video camera, looking that way to see if someone was watching, that gave off the just, oh my gosh, it sent like a chill up my spine. And I'm not saying, I know one creator was like, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be so crazy if the friend Bonnie was actually Kessinger and like she was friends with this family or whatever? Because I do find it very telling that the quote unquote friends that were there at the party was they left so quickly. Like the law was called and they were gone, to the point the law enforcement had to call the friends on the phone and say, "Hey, what happened?" And it was really, really like big ick. Um, so moving on, but the husband is explaining this whole situation like this is he saw his wife kiss this other girl or other woman, and after 12 years of marriage, it infuriated him. It would piss anybody off. I don't care who you are, drunk, sober, half asleep. You see something and you see your spouse cheating on you in your home with the kids there. I mean, the kids could have come right up the stairs. And the worst part that gets overlooked, and I just could not believe it. If a man gaslights a woman, he is a narcissist, he is horrible, he's a monster, he's all the things. This woman gaslit him so bad because he didn't. Here's the thing, this man is being made out to be like this angry man, and he's this horrible husband. This man had more composure than I and discipline than I would have, because I can straight up tell you, I don't know that I could have gone up those stairs and not at least verbally made it known what I was thinking. Um, and he was hurt and he was mad. And so he goes up the stairs. He does not say anything confrontational to either one of them. He just says, I need to speak with you in the garage. Him and his wife go down into the garage. He then asks her, "What the hell?" Like, "I saw you kissing her, like, what happened?" She gaslights him so hard, even with the video in front of her face where she is clearly kissing this other woman. This wife is gaslighting him to, like, pedal to the metal, refuses to acknowledge that she kissed another woman. And that at that point is when he lost, like when he got angry and got really frustrated, as anybody would. All it takes is you asking someone who's ever been in a situation where you've been gaslit before. It it will boil your blood so much because you know what you saw, you know what you felt, you know what you experienced. And this person is telling you, you're crazy. It didn't happen like that. It's not what it was. It was not like That's not okay. That is abuse. So you've got abuse coming from her. Him slapping the glass out of her hand is abuse. I know a lot of people say, oh, well, he didn't hit her, he just hit the glass. He still hit the glass. He still made a choice to, out of anger, hit something that could have essentially, like, it inflicted fear on her. And in doing so, like, if it invokes fear in another person for their safety and well-being, that is a form of abuse. That is mental abuse, whether you hit them or not. And part of the problem that I've seen is in the comment sections of videos, I'm seeing, well, he didn't hit her, or she, it was just a kiss. Well, it wasn't just a kiss, and he did not hit her. However, they both made choices in the heat of the moment that could have cost them both their kids, and it could have escalated even more. And that's where the problems are, guys. That's where the gray areas are, because probably one of the hardest abusive relationships to get out of is when it's mental and verbal and emotional. It's no one else sees it. And on the outside, everything looks like it's great and it's all put together. No one else sees it. There's no hitting, so there's no bruising, there's no cuts, there's no anything. And I am going to share with you my thoughts on this incident. And I want you to understand that I'm saying it treading very, very lightly with how I explain it, because A, I've been the wife in an abusive marriage. B, I have learned a lot with how to handle situations like this in counseling through the years. And C, I think it makes it a little bit easier to have this conversation given both the husband and wife are alive. And that is this. Totally lost it. I'm so sorry. I was totally going somewhere with that and just totally lost it. The whole concept of he did not hit her. She didn't do X, Y, and Z. You have to think of it in terms of this. Each action is going to have a reaction of some sort. You have to be able to control how you respond to negative stimuli. And something I learned in counseling was being able to be accountable for my own actions and my own ways of responding, because a lot of times each person loves, argues, and responds in the only way that they've ever been taught. And if you pay attention to your friends or you pay attention to your relatives, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And you have to train yourself to not respond like that. And it's not always easy. One example I'll give you is even tonight, for example, my ex-husband and I have been co-parenting our son for 15 years. The divorce was 15 years ago, and or 14, 15, something like that. Um, football schedule, school schedule just kicked off, and just trying to communicate like last minute changes and things like that. And sometimes it gets frustrating because he lives so far away, and it's easy for him to feel like he's intentionally being left out. And those are like emotional things that he struggles with because he has missed a lot. Um, but sitting our son down tonight and explaining to him, listen, if changes occur at school, you've got to come and tell mom. And then mom has got to be able to have a conversation with dad. That way we're all on the same page and no one is getting their feelings hurt and things like that. But if you would listen to the first 10 minutes of that conversation, you would have never thought in a million years we would have come to the conclusion that we did on that phone call. And it was because the frustration and the emotions were coming through in the beginning because it was hurt and it was hurt, it was a misunderstanding, and it was all other emotions added into, into one phone call. And you have to um, keep that in mind. Literally, like you have to keep that in check depending on who you're dealing with. Now, again, he and I divorced a long time ago. That does not mean that co-parenting has been, kosher and that it's been chill and everything's worked out well. No, it's a constant, like, reaffirming and reassessing a situation to make sure that every response and reaction that you're doing is not provoking or poking at someone. And, can you do it all the time? No. Can you be perfect all the time? No. It's impossible. But the only thing you can do is the only person you can control is yourself. You can control your attitude, you can control how you respond to things. And that's really difficult for a lot of people these days. And you see it in teenagers, you see it in adults, you see it in older adults. Like, good God, the dating world is just horrible, horrible at our age. So, anyway, let's see, let's come back to okay. So some people would say when they're watching the video, oh well, she's crying and she's so scared. And there's a couple of things I want to touch on. Seeing your husband that angry is very scary. If you've ever been in a situation where things have just escalated and your spouse has come at you, whether they've put hands on you or not, when you see someone that you love that angry and it's directed at you, it is extremely scary. However, we hear the wife mention things like the husband is an angry man. Oh, here we go. Now, see, I remember what I was going to tell you guys. We hear the wife say to the law enforcement, he's just a quote, an angry man. And then as the law enforcement officer speaks with her, she opens up a little bit more and she says, like he's kind of like hit on the doors or pushed in the doors. And I don't know if she said hit the walls, but she alludes to the fact that, like, he outwardly expresses his anger and frustration in unhealthy ways. And you hear the officer say things like, has he ever pushed you? And you can see the wife, she kind of like cowers down and she says, has he ever shoved you? And she kind of goes through like different questions, but she's trying to get the full picture of what their marriage has looked like. Because if this is one isolated incident and the drinks were flowing and this just, escalated, and now they've really got to have a heart to heart conversation with a counselor, that's one thing. But law enforcement was really, really smart to kind of pry a little bit and get some more information out of her. And the wife ends up stating, he's done this before, but wouldn't do anything too bad because he knew he would go to jail and that would hurt the kids. Now, I have a couple of things to say about that. But back to what I was going to say before I totally lost my train of thought is my take on this entire incident is this. And I say it very respectfully and very just as sensitively as I possibly can. And that is this. This family was facing foreclosure. It's public records. I don't know if they actually ended up filing bankrupt. I don't know if financially they moved forward in the process of things, but there are documents out there. It's public information. This family was already struggling. Now, the husband, you know, they both have said, "We've been through a lot together in 12 years. We've been through a lot together in 12 years." Regardless of what their reasoning for wanting the Watts house was, they wanted it. And fast forward to 2024, and this woman is still wearing shoulder cutout shirts. Like, it's not to be superficial or anything like that, but guys, they don't really sell those shirts a whole lot anymore. Like, the style is kind of gone out, if you will. Um, and she's at a super, and again, it's not to knock her like appearance, if you will, but it's many years past. Shania wearing every shirt she had was just about like cut out shoulders. It was cute many years, like back in 2017, 2018. Its style has changed. This lady sets up the I've seen them at TJ Maxx. That's the main place I've seen them, and I used to have, like, 2 shirts like that, but again, I haven't had them, bought them, or worn them since about 2017 to 2019. Um, and maybe she just likes it, that's okay too, but in my opinion, based off of what she has told law enforcement, where she says he's done this before, as far as like it's escalated, she's scared of him. And the officer even tells her, "You're not scared of him over just one incident. Has this happened before?" And you can tell she was hesitant. She didn't really want to say anything initially. And then as she got comfortable, it was almost like once she bought into the idea that this may be her way out, it was like, okay, now the story's got to come together. And the charges, they've got to stack enough to get him out of the house. They've got to stack enough to get a restraining order. Those two misdemeanors, and I'm not the fashion police. If you only knew I live in scrubs and workout clothes or pajamas, I'm by far the fashion police, that's for sure. I'm sorry, I just happened to look down and saw your comment. Um, but no, it's having listened to the audio and the video in real time, she's kind of progressively walking through the incident, and then it's like, "Oh, and I cut my finger." Well, if you listen to the audio of the call with the friend that she kissed, law enforcement asked her friend, "Was she injured? Did anything happen?" And she says no. She said, "He did not put his hands on her. He knocked the glass out of her hands, and she had no injuries that I was aware of." Well, the wife tells law enforcement she and the husband cleaned up the glass together. So now she is saying she's making an accusation that he knocked the glass so hard out of her hand that it broke in her hand and cut her on the finger. Whereas if the cut wasn't there before the friend left, then did she just cut it when they were cleaning up the glass? And they were cleaning up the glass together. So she did not sustain that injury. She did not sustain that injury from him hitting the glass out of her hand. If he knocked the glass out of her hand and it broke against the wall, then do you guys see what I'm saying? Like, that injury takes things up a notch. Like, now he's done something and it's caused bodily harm. That can become a bigger problem. And of course, them tacking on the child abuse charges. The reason law enforcement tacks on charges like that is so that if the lesser charges get dropped, then at least the suspect is held with one at least sticking. And so as I'm listening to this, she's telling law enforcement upstairs, she's got these crocodile tears and she's really upset. And again, I'm not taking away from the fact that when your husband is angry and he comes at you and knocks something out of your hand or just even approaches you in an angry manner, it will scare the hell out of you. Um, and she's clearly had other incidents like this before where he's lost his temper. And so she's understandably, she's shaken up a bit, but she's sitting there and she's like, "Please don't take my babies. Please don't I don't wanna lose my babies. Please don't take my babies." Now keep in mind, this one officer has her upstairs. She has no idea what the husband is telling the officers out in the garage. So she's upstairs going, "I don't wanna lose my babies. Please don't take my babies." And yeah, instinctively, your motherly heart is like, "Oh, like, I hope she doesn't lose her kids." But what you don't know in that moment is that the husband has told the police that less than 48 hours prior, she locked the kids out of the bedroom overnight and did not respond to them when they came knocking at her door. So, in my opinion, the crocodile tears are really, it's again just my opinion. The crocodile tears, the hyper emotions, the anxiety that she's feeling in that moment when she's worried about her babies. She's not worried about her babies because of what the husband did. She's worried about losing her babies because A, she knows that the husband's going to jail. She also knows that if they decide to arrest her, then DCF or the state are going to come and take the kids until they can find placement for them. And even the officer says, "Well, why would we take the babies from you?" And she's like, "I don't know." And she does know because that guilty conscience is eating at her that she knows she should have gotten up and done, and checked on the babies or whatnot. So, in my opinion, or at least this is my like initial observation of this whole entire domestic call. I'm talking from the body cam footage I've seen at different angles. This is not the first time this stuff has happened. Those kids, those kids are like walking around like it is no big deal. It is no big deal. There are four law enforcement officers with guns walking in full uniform all through this house. Dad's been taken to the garage. Mom's upstairs crying. And these kids are just running around, playing, watching their shows, talking, chit chatting with law enforcement like it's nothing but a thing. And you have to stop and ask yourself, like, if a child sees their mother crying, most of the time when it's not the norm, that kid's gonna come up and ask mommy, is she okay? That kid's gonna, and people can say, oh, well, they may have done it before law enforcement got there. Maybe. And I know everybody's kids are different, but I also know that my boys would constantly come back and say, are you okay? Mom, are you good? Mom, are you okay? And I would have to constantly like give reassurance that yes, I'm okay. It's okay. And these kids, it's like they are completely unfazed. And that to me was heartbreaking because this was a pretty tense moment. And you've got mom and dad yelling at each other, you've got glass breaking, you've got um, you know, you've got all this commotion, and now you've got four law enforcement officers walking through your house that these kids don't know, and they're not worried at all. They're just like, "Yeah, okay, I'm going to play." That to me was disturbing. And furthermore, as you're listening to the body cam footage, and the mom says she tells law enforcement that he's done this before, but he's never gone that far because he knows that like she would call the police and then he would go to jail and he wouldn't do anything quote unquote too bad because he knew that would hurt the kids, if he went to jail. And something that really irks me sometimes, and I understand it because I've been at rock bottom and having to pick myself up after leaving a marriage and starting all over again. Like, I know what it's like to sleep on the floor because you don't have a bed. I know what it's like to move you and your kids into a friend's garage because it's much better to sleep in a garage than it is to not be able to sleep at night. And So I say this having dealt with very real situations on my own. But the truth is staying in that situation is, in fact, hurting the kids. And if he's doing these types of things repeatedly, then it's not a safe environment for the kids. And therefore, he's not being a good father to the kids. And I hate it when people are like, he's such a great dad. It's just not working with the wife. It may not be working with the wife, but you still need to treat her respectfully until you get a divorce and then you learn to co-parent. But to abuse, whether it's verbally, mentally, emotionally, financially, physically, whether whether that's what you do, at the end of the day, like if you can't control yourself, you're not capable of being a good parent. You've got to be able to control yourself dealing with an adult because dealing with a child is all the more stressful, especially when they look like the spouse or when they start acting like the spouse. It really, really ignites emotions with that when that comes into play. And so there's a case, I mentioned it before, here locally with the law professor who was murdered with his ex-wife's family hired hitmen came up and they they murdered the husband or the ex-husband, the father of the children. And you know long story short, they're in the midst of prosecuting everybody that was involved. But time and time and time again, the prosecution opens up with, he was the best father. He was the best father. He was the greatest father. And yet they overlook, yes, the Adelsons, they overlook the fact that their divorce was so nasty that they were fighting over freaking tennis rackets and bicycles long beyond their divorce being settled and finalized. It was constant fighting. It was you took the wrong hot dogs to the daycare. I mean, it was ridiculous. And to think, and even his friends will say, like, oh, he needled people, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And yes, he's the victim, and it's horrible what happened to him. But you cannot sit there and say someone was the best father and always put his kids as his top priority when you're sitting there and you are intentionally provoking, like you're a freaking law professor, go buy a new damn tennis racket. Like, why fight over stuff like that in court throughout a divorce to make it that much more? Like, at that point, you both are in the wrong. And the only people that suffer are the kids because all of that crap led to an escalating issue within that family and them losing their freaking minds. And now he's no longer here. And unfortunately, those kids have had to grow up their entire lives never getting to know their father. And I'm sure he was a wonderful man. I'm sure he probably was a great father. But in those moments where you're in the midst of a divorce and you are making decisions that intentionally inflict pain or hurt or manipulate or abuse the entire situation of the divorce proceedings just to get a jab at the ex, I don't care who you are. That is low and that is crap. Because again, your child suffers when the parent is struggling and suffering like that. And it happens so much and so often. And yet, nobody wants to talk about it because no one wants to talk about the gray flags that lead up to the escalation. They don't want to talk about abuse until someone has been beat. They don't want to call it abuse until someone is on the receiving end of a hit or on the receiving end of violence, like full-fledged physical violence or annihilation in this case. And I truly believe both families in the Watts case, and I say this with God, it breaks my heart because I think about it probably more than I should, but I truly, truly believe the hardest part of grieving the loss of Shanann, Bella, Cece, and baby Nico is that those last days leading up to their return back to Colorado. And I say that because I truly believe the family was picking up on things, and I do think they knew. I think whether it was subconsciously in their gut, I think they knew because even in the interviews they talk about, well, hey, why don't you just stay? And I have more information that I'll end up sharing eventually, just not tonight, but um where I genuinely believe her family as well as the Watts knew that things were boiling over. And I know they were like, "Oh, well, they were perfect together and we never saw anything." Guys, that's the hardest thing to acknowledge to yourself is that you were seeing stuff but you didn't realize what it was that you were seeing. And that's why I created this channel. I created this channel because there are those hidden, very passive, underlying digs and jabs that occur. And unfortunately, our society has made it normal. Oh, you're just being sensitive. No, like you have to be able to communicate with anyone. And you have to be able to do that without fear of how they're going to respond back to you. And if you're in a marriage or a relationship, you really have to be able to trust the person that you're with. And so, do I think any of it was done or ignored intentionally? No, not at all. But I think he got there and Chris got there and Chris was distant and, they noticed. They were like, dude, what's wrong? But then they were thinking maybe he's just getting acclimated back to the kids or the time zone, jet lag. And so they were giving him the benefit of the doubt like anybody would. And I do think they started putting and piecing things together. But at the end of the day, I wholeheartedly believe Chris was going to leave Kessinger. I truly believe he was going to leave her. And that's another theory and story for another time, but it's it breaks my heart because when you think about the families and this grief process, it's hard enough to lose someone that you love. It's even harder when you don't get the chance to say goodbye. And it's absolutely unfathomable when you tell them goodbye, but you have no idea that it's the last time you'll ever see them. And then to have not one, not two, not three, but four people taken from you, that is, that's just, it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And to read some of the comments and some of the sections, it really is painful because at the end of the day, the Watts case, the Miller case, the reason these things catch our attention, this Miller case, if it wasn't in the Watts house, it probably would have never been broadcasted. It would have never been searched. I'm sure I could petition Weld County to release 15 to 20 more domestic calls and we would get them quickly because the house is not the issue. The house is not the problem. If in fact there's an entity of domestic violence, guess what, guys? It's not just in the house, it's all across the world because cases like this happen all the time. And yeah, this family's very lucky that it did not escalate beyond this. And I didn't do too much digging because whether you're praying to intercede on behalf of the family, the safety, the marriage, I'm not sure what, what they may or may have chosen not to do, but I think regardless, they both could benefit from some very intensive therapy sessions. And the fact that the wife took zero accountability for anything that happened that night, that was very problematic for me because I just simply felt like the wife, once she committed to, okay, this is it, this is my final straw, it was how can I make this case stick so that I can get out? And I'm not judging her if that's what she felt like she had to do. I'll keep my opinions about that to myself. But the child abuse charges, I felt like were absolutely ridiculous. I felt like that was overkill because they both attested to the kids were in the basement when the incident occurred. Those kids were nowhere near, the party area and all of that kind of stuff until law enforcement got there. And you do hear the kids, like, saying that they heard this is what, but by then, the parents had been talking about it, law enforcement had been there talking about it, so these kids are old enough to hear what they hear and then repeat back what they're saying, which, you know, I think was a major, major issue even in the Watts case, and already mentioned about the thought of, let's see. So I hate to say it, but I do believe this whole incident was essentially a setup. And again, sadly, it almost cost the man as well as her their children. And it's, it's one thing to have a party, it's one thing to drink, it's one thing to have a couple cocktails or whatnot, but you definitely have got to make sure that, you're keeping yourself in check. Now, something I did want to say is that the father being charged with the misdemeanors and the child abuse, like I said, getting the restraining order was a no-brainer. And you stack that on top of a child custody case and 12 years of marriage, you guys have to understand, with all of that stacked against the husband, the wife would be set to get child support, alimony, half of what is theirs from the marriage. In Colorado, just as it is in Florida, it's a no-fault state. So even if the wife committed adultery right there on video, after 10 years of being married, the assets get distributed 50-50, and it does not matter if she cheated on her husband. She could have slept with somebody right there on the couch, and it wouldn't have mattered. And I feel like his emotions in that situation, he walked right into it. I mean, it was a setup, and he walked literally right into it. Um, I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong, but I can tell you, sh that case that case to get him out and get the divorce rolling in a favorable way towards her, it definitely happened that way. And, I put down here, what do we keep missing? Life is hard, marriage can be hard. But, you guys, again, you can take one look into the comment sections and you'll see exactly how quickly people get so emotionally invested in what they're trying to say that half the time they don't even fully think through their thoughts, and they'll type a comment out and they'll respond to somebody and it'll be so hateful. And it's like what you're trying to get across may not be the issue, but knowing when and how to communicate with someone can make all the difference. And, I'm just thankful that both husband and wife are alive. The kids are fine. And I'm just double checking my notes to make sure I didn't miss out on anything. So one thing I do want, I think I pointed it out a little bit earlier, but I don't know that I actually said it. One thing about the camera is that they both said that they put the cameras up to watch the kids. Totally understand wanting to do that, especially in a house that size. And I know some people in the comments were saying, and even I believe Plunder mentioned it on her video, saying, like if I have to spy on somebody, then I don't want to be with them. And I don't discount that at all. Um, but do I originally think that's what that camera was put up there for? No. That camera, it makes perfect sense that that's where the kids would typically watch TV and play. And if they were like downstairs in the living room watching TV themselves, then it's cool that you can, just put the camera up on your phone and you can see what's going on. And I did, something I will challenge you guys when you're watching this body cam footage is shifting of ownership. Pay attention to the shifting of ownership because it truly does show you where a person's deep inner thoughts are and where they're originating from in those moments. You will see it both with the husband and the wife. It shifts from ours to mine to they to we and then back. It's just really, really interesting. And domestic violence, of course, no matter what party it comes from, the male or the female, it's absolutely unacceptable in any form. And we have got to do a better job with how we treat those we love and associate with. No level of domestic violence is acceptable, period. And the last thing I really wanted to mention was something not domestic violence related at all. It was just more cosmetic or aesthetically, if you will. And that is, I noticed while watching or looking at some of these photos and looking at the video, let me pull this up real quick, see if I can do it. I noticed that um, some of the Watts, where's my share screen? Here we go. Some of the Watts very pieces still remain in the house. And I thought that was kind of odd. I mean, interesting, but odd because I don't know. You have to drop in your comments what you think about it. But so looking at this, this is how they updated, and this is public, guys, so that's why I'm showing you. But this is on Zillow because the home is listed. It's now listed for $724,900. Again, if I won the lottery, I would buy it in a heartbeat, but there's no way that mortgage payment would be insane. So as you look inside, it is a little bit different. They shifted things around. They definitely have more decor pieces on the inside. And of course I do like the black a lot better. I like the accent pieces. But let's see. Where's the first place I wanted to show? I'm trying to see if I can see the angle of it. So one thing I did notice was in one of the body cam footage videos, you see the wife walk up to the door and then she comes up and she hits this latch. And so the latch that they originally put there for Cece and Bella so that they wouldn't get out the front door, and infamously the latch that basically set off everything when it came to Shanann, um, it's still there. And I know they changed the locks down here, but I found it interesting that this latch, they left it up here because, again, I mean, that latch was specifically put up there for Cece. And I did notice this little stain right here. This stain, I do believe you can see it in several of the body cam footage of the original Watts area or Watts crime scenes. You can see that there. I always wondered if it was a legit stain or what it was, and it appears that it's still there. So It must be something that just won't come out because clearly they've had the floor shampooed. And I did think it was interesting how they moved the TV to the wall. Trying to, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but so here in these photos, you don't see the little mat, but you see these curtains, and these are literally like the same blue curtains that once hung up there with, with the Watts home, or when it was the Watts home. And I don't think there was anything else in the kitchen I really saw. It was more so up here, like upstairs in this area. This is the view of the couch where saw saw the two women kissing. And you can see the layout of their bedroom. I know somebody was asking about this, and I feel, I mean, it's a little bit different. Like the TV was over here, but like the bed is still up against that same wall. You can kind of see things look a little different. Wasn't paying too much attention to all of this. I don't really want to get into their kids' rooms. They don't live there anymore, so again, that's why I feel okay sharing this with you guys. You can see that the basement, they enclosed it, or they finished it up a little bit, added some things, and like I said, the TV's down here. I did find it odd that this refrigerator stayed. Like this was in the Watts home. And even when the Watts home was vacant, you could still see that refrigerator downstairs. Um, and you can't see it in any of these photos, but the other odd thing that I saw was the, you might be able to see it here. Hang on, let me see. Oh no, you can't really see it. This is the husband while he was out. It's a still shot. While he was out talking to law enforcement. I did find it odd that the wife's car is white and then the husband's truck was gray and pretty much the same as Chris Watts. But again, some of those things are just, they're very minute, don't really matter. And so I don't want to put too much of an emphasis on that. But I did find it interesting. Like one of the things that really stood out was the baby gate at the top of the stairs. They removed the baby gate, but the latch, and you'll see it in the body cam, like when you watch the video, but the latch is still attached at the top of the stairs. And it just seems like, like they took something off, but they didn't take it fully off. And I don't know, just again, those are very small and they're insignificant, don't really matter. But I wanted to come on and share with you guys just my thoughts about why this case, it's making its rounds again because of the house that it occurred in. But many people have asked the question like, why do you keep covering Watts? Why does everybody want to know more about the Watts case? Why is everyone still asking questions? Well, people are drawn to this case very much like I believe this family was drawn to this house. And that's because, guys, unfortunately, the economy the way it is right now, people are struggling in two adult households. I'm a single mom with two kids, and it's a struggle. I'll tell you that. I mean, I have a good job. I'm blessed with a good job, and I work my tail off. I work a second job, and we have a good life. But to say that if I get sick or I have to take a couple days off, like it would it would be very, very difficult to be able to breathe again for a while. And so I don't
doubt that there's many, and I know there's many people who stay for several reasons. They, um, what people I believe are drawn to in these cases is genuinely that a lot more people deal with these types of issues behind closed doors, and it scares the living hell out of them to think that these horrible cases of the absolute worst extreme all started with the American dream. It all started with a husband, a man and a woman getting married and having these dreams for this family and having complications and difficulties and getting swept up into this abusive cycle of how to manipulate and impose upon or force the other one to basically cave to every idea in every situation. And it's just so important that in relationships, you've got to know when to bend and fold and, when to stand firm on your boundaries, but be respectful and be mindful of how your actions actually impact other people. So it really just I believe these cases stand out so much because no one ever hears about them until it's the worst case scenario. But where we really need to be talking about things, listening to your friends, listen to your family, speak up when you hear someone changing their tone of voice. You can tell when someone's been angry. You can tell when someone's being condescending or passive aggressive. Like, it's important sometimes even to call that stuff out respectfully, but call it out because sometimes they don't even realize that they're doing it. And other times they know exactly what they're doing. But if they think that someone else is picking up on it, they'll stop. And so you just never know when speaking up and listening to your friends and really just being there for them could make all the difference in the world. And probably the hardest thing is when you firmly believe someone is quote unquote a good guy or a good girl and they turn out to have communication issues or relationship issues that mirror exactly what we talk about in these cases. And you've got to, I do think it's society's obligation to educate yourself on how to de escalate situations, how to um, really pay attention to those that cross your path. No one crosses your path by accident. I firmly believe that. And so I think that's kind of where I would like to leave things. I do want to go through these comments. So let's go through and just kind of have follow up to some of the comments and go up. I know we were laughing about screen names earlier and try not to say them wrong. Hey Roxanne, check in and see everybody. I really appreciate you guys being here. I don't go live a lot. I do enjoy it when I actually do it, but oh my gosh. So egg salad is on the menu for tomorrow here at our house. And I do believe my son and I are going to make another trip to pay our respects to Shania and the kids because, this story is not just a story. It's I don't know. It's just it's sad because it's such an example of humanity right now. and it's escalating. And thank God for law enforcement in Colorado approaching this situation the way that they did. I'm telling you, like, I don't know what they've done from 2018 to 2024, but how they conducted that questioning right there on the spot, it wasn't prying, but it was just enough to like nurse and nurture, especially the wife, along to be able to answer questions. And man, oh man, if we had had that kind of questioning and a couple other interviews, I think it would look much different. But again, I mean, I can't believe it's been 6 years. Angie, I agree. Sometimes we have to, though, because the reality is it's been sensationalized so much that a lot of times, we forget that you're not just watching a movie, you're literally watching the pain and the suffering that an entire family has had to go through. So, hold on, see if this will come up. I didn't expect this tonight. I watched Plunder's latest about the Miller 911 body cam footage. The Watts and the Millers to have 3,000 mortgage payments is, it is ridiculous, but honestly, that's like the freaking average. I know here in Florida, it's insane. It's absolutely crazy. And even worse here in Florida is the car insurance. Car insurance is through the roof. And again, if you have not seen the full body cam footage of all of this, Plunder has it over on her Patreon. And I think it was only like 3, maybe 5, maybe 7 for the month or something. It really was not a lot if that's something that you want to invest some time in. There are haunted, what does it say? Let's see. There are haunted places no matter what you do. I agree. I agree. I just feel like there's too much emphasis on shifting the blame away from the actual people involved. Very much like Chris and Kessinger and the whole 9 yards. Like, people want to shift the blame away from everybody. And it's like, no, each one of you played a role in it. It's just whether or not the role you played in it was criminal or not. But immoral, like morally, it was wrong. So it let's see. Want to know what was behind the door in between the laundry room and master bedroom, even if it is a closet. Was there anything hidden? Um, let me see. You said between, hang on. Let me see if I can pull this up again. Oh, let me share the screen. Hold on. All right, let's see if, let me scroll down and see what you're talking about. Upstairs. Now, I did find it interesting. Literally, the laundry room is exactly how it was with Shanann. Same color, same shelving, same laundry floor mat. Like, it's all the same. It's literally like, I don't even know if they do their laundry in that laundry room because, like, it, I mean, look at this. Aside from the fact that, there is a shelf. So, like, there's a shelf here instead of rack here. Like, these shelves are the same. This floor mat down here is the same. The paint color is the same. It's just, I don't know, that was just interesting to me. All right, so let's go back. Oh, wait, you said upstairs. I will tell you, if I don't have what you're looking for here, it is, you can see a lot in the body cam footage. You can definitely tell to use the shower. So let's see. Hmm. I don't really see what you were looking at. Again, if you don't see it in these photos, you can most certainly see it in the, hang on, let's do this. All right, let's see if I can manage this. Stair landing. Okay. Okay, maybe this is what you're talking. Coming back to the comments so I can see. Is this what you're talking about? This might be what you're talking about. So you can see the laundry room, and I want to say this was her office. I want to say this was her office. No, no, I take that back. Her office was downstairs, wasn't it? Gosh, I'm gonna have to go back and watch the body cam footage again. So, okay, here you go. So you can see how they took the baby gate down, but the baby gate fastener is still here. I really do like this blue on the wall. But yeah, I would have to pull I would have to pull the Watts body cam footage to be able to figure out exactly what was behind this door. I don't know if it was like a closet. I don't know why I want to say it was her. Okay, a closet with a hot water tank. That makes sense. Making egg salad for you and your mom. Yeah, I really think I'm gonna make some tomorrow. Good evening, Tony. It's good to see you. Let's see. Yeah, I really hope people aren't trolling in the comments. Again, just trying to keep this thing on task. Not really interested in going down rabbit holes tonight. I think out of respect for just the family and Shanann and Cece and Bella and baby Nico, I think, the best thing we can do is make sure that we spread awareness about how these types of incidents occur, how, if you're not careful, that, the unexpected can creep up on you. And, you know, I look at this and I look at the body cam footage, and I know a lot of people don't like to see Chris, but once upon a time they were happily married. And once upon a time they were fighting for each other. And once upon a time it was them versus the world. And Chris really did do that for her, in the sense of, there were a lot of times that she would ask him to expect to do things that, such as like not talking to his family and things like that, that while I may not agree with, he fought, he said okay. And again, it's not a matter of our place to judge how they decided to live their married life. But the the issue is you can't just talk about a domestic violence case and wipe out any of the characters, because they all play a role. They all do. and no one is perfect. We all make mistakes, and there is absolutely no excuse for anything that ever happened to this family, period. I don't care who it is. And I'll be going over this photo soon on the channel, but I think that it's best to save that one for another time. I just saw these from that summer, where they were just playing and having a good time. And again, I go back to Sandra's videos sometimes. Just she cooks, and I think cooking helps keep her busy. At least that's what she mentions and what she says. And then ever so often she'll mention Shanann or the girls or things like that. And yeah, that egg salad video really got me. It's like 4 minutes of squeeze your heart to pieces. But I had originally thought that I would stay on until 1:48, but I don't know unless you guys have additional questions or anything. Let's see. Just thinking that. Let's see. Yeah, going back to like if things were hidden or not. I think the one comment that Chris says that really, really irks me is he asked, did they check the pipes? And my whole thing is, what was the deal with the pipes? That's the one just like random comment that he says. And I don't know, something in my gut says there's more to that. And I just don't know what it could be. I don't know. I don't know what it is. And that one line is the only other concept that really would make me think that there was additional planning involved. Let's see. Okay, so guys, for the purpose of tonight, we're going to leave certain names out of some of this conversation because I really want this to focus primarily on the domestic violence issues, the gray flags that people are missing, why this story caught our attention again, why certain channels are jumping on the bandwagon of the house is haunted, it was an entity, here we go again, it's demonic, it's all of these things. And the truth is, like, we have to call it what it is. It's domestic violence. And it does not start with someone automatically being scared. Like, you're taught to be scared, and you're taught that by people's behaviors. You're also taught to provoke, you're also taught to respond. So there is a lot of similarities, but I feel like by being able to look at the Miller situation in real time on the body cam, it's unbiased. You have no one trying to say, as of right now at least, you don't have anyone coming out of the woodwork like trying to make it something that it's not or blowing things out of proportion. Things are not getting twisted down, 60,000 rabbit holes, but it is what it is. The wife made a stupid decision by kissing another woman in the house. They were already under stress. They were trying to have a good time at a party. Alcohol was involved, yes, but the gaslighting, the manipulation, the cheating, like you add all of this stuff in, and you have to be able to look at both sides and say, what the hell are you both thinking? And again, thank God in that situation, law enforcement was able to get there and they're at least, they're alive and they're moving forward with their lives. But unfortunately, today we have a very sad anniversary of the loss of Shanann, Bella,
Cece and baby Nico. And I think as YouTube creators, content creators, it's important for us to make sure that we take time to remember wholeheartedly the victims as far as, we cover these cases, we tell their stories, we deep dive into literally every piece, nook and cranny of this case. And on a day like today, when Shanann's family is going to wake up, assuming that they've even been able to sleep tonight, if you've ever lost someone that you love, you literally replay that over and over and over again. And I don't think there's a single person in chat that could close their eyes right now and not imagine that her plane's getting ready to land. And not too much longer, she's going to be walking up those steps like we've seen so many times. And, you know, home to what? Home to deal with what? And God only knows what happened that day. But if having videos like this, having contents and conversations in the comments allows for someone to say, you know what, I don't deserve to be treated that way. I shouldn't have talked to so and so that way. Whether they're talking to someone else or they're self reflecting on where they need their own personal growth. If one video makes someone stop and think about that to where it shifts and changes the course of their behavior, then guys, we're getting somewhere. And then all of this is worth it as far as continuing to share the cases and stuff like that. So it's no doubt it was evil that was present that day. There's not a doubt in my mind about that. But guys, you have to remember, much like what we talked about in the beginning with the verse, you can pray to intercede on people's behalf. You can pray to protect those that you love. You can pray to protect strangers. You can pray to bless strangers. And you can also pray to God to convict someone's heart if you feel like they're the ones that are inflicting the pain and the fear in someone else. So I think with that, I think I'm going to end the live stream, and that way, we can take the day, and I'm sure there's going to be other channels that have videos and things of that nature. Um, Without doing too much of a pitch, if you don't mind and you want to like and share the live stream when it ends in post, then maybe someone else can listen to it and think about things in a different light. But let's see, Marco. Yeah, that's a tough year. Marco said he lost his father and separated from his wife all within the same year. It's tough, you know, starting over, having that deep pain. It doesn't just go away. And Marco, I see where you said say that again, but I wasn't quite sure what you were talking about. I will tell you this. I do know that this comment right here is accurate. That's all I'm going to say about her, but I do know that is accurate. At least all the information that I have as of today, that's what I've gathered as well. Oh, Chris's statement. His statement was in the confession, and he had mentioned that he asked Coder if they checked the pipes at the house. And it's one of those moments in the confession when many of us believe it was edited out, redacted out, and you really don't get the full extent of that conversation because
then Coder's follow-up question is something completely unrelated to any of it. Um, but it's just a random comment that he throws out there, and it's just like, why would we be checking the pipes? And the only other thing that has anything to do with the pipes would be the explosion that happened back in the 20, I believe it was 2017, where the fuel lines or the gas lines or something like that stemmed off of an oil well through Anadarko, and it blew up a house and it like killed and injured the family and whatnot. Why, Chili Sunshine, I'm trying to understand what you're asking. Why is the narrator saying we got to stick just to the Millers out of respect to Shanann's family, but talks about the details? I'm not saying you have to stick to the Millers. I'm saying that for this episode, I really wanted to bring into account the Millers domestic call that happened and really focus in on the gray areas of that situation and how there's a lot that there's a lot about Shanann and Chris's marriage and relationship that we don't get to speak about. And a lot of that has to do with protecting Shanann's reputation. And while I understand it from a loved one's perspective, it really muddies the waters with being able to remain objective. Chili Sunshine, if you don't like it or don't like the content, you're welcome to leave. There's been nothing in this conversation, nothing in this live that has been anything of the sorts. Let's see. It's possible. I mean, the toilet itself definitely was, the toilet was definitely empty. It was dry. I know some people speculated that they kept it empty because the girls would go back and forth in it, but they both were potty trained for the most part, so that doesn't really make any sense. But yeah, I mean, he mentions checking the pipes, and it's just like I said, it's just a random comment that um, I don't quite believe some theories. I know that some are kind of out there, but I do feel like there are quite a few leads that kind of point in different directions. Yeah, I'm sure there's trolls out tonight. It's unfortunate, but I do think my computer is getting ready to overheat, and I don't really want to do that. So I am going to tell you guys good night. I do appreciate you being here and hanging out for the whole hour and 40. You know what? I said I wanted to ended at 1:48 and now we're at 1:48. It may not have been 1:48 at the time, but it's 1:48 when I'm ready to end it. So, thank you guys so much for being here. I truly appreciate you guys, and for this purpose, I'm going to end it right now.